Sometimes I see missing persons cases that seem very solvable if the right person would just come forward with information or if the right piece of information would just come into view. This is a missing persons case about a man from Franklin County, Arkansas named Jaylan Alston. Jaylan Alston was last seen September 1st on his family farm in Ozark. The thing about the disappearance of Jaylan Alston is that several months before his disappearance, Jaylan Alston was entangled in an investigation about an officer from Johnson County, Arkansas, and alleged inappropriate conduct on the officer's part. That officer, who was actually an investigator, became the investigator on Jaylan Alston's disappearance case just 6 months later. I was able to speak to Bailey, Jaylan's daughter, who has advocated for her father since his disappearance, trying to find out what happened to him and who is responsible. I think it's important to hear from Bailey on what she has been able to find out on the disappearance of her father. So Bailey is going to help me tell about the disappearance of Jaylan Alston. I'm going to remind you again at the end of this video, but if you have tips about the disappearance of Jaylan Alston, Bailey asked that you email them to the email address that she has set up, which is jaylanalstoncasetips@gmail.com. This is Bailey talking about the disappearance of her father, Jaylan Alston.
Well, I just turned 19. I had been living in Florida for about a year when I found out that my dad went missing. People were calling me, like my uncle was calling me, my aunt called me, and they were like, "Is your dad down there with you?"
Bailey and her brother Josh, who she will be talking about, were both very close to their father, but at the time of his disappearance, Bailey was living in Florida.
And I had just talked to my dad like a week ago, and normally we would talk every day, but at this last phone call I had with him, I was a little irritated at him. So I just was like, okay, I'm not going to talk to him for a little bit. I had family members calling me asking if he was in Florida with me, and I was like, no, why would he be here? And they're like, well, we can't find him. We can't get a hold of him. And I was like, well, how long has it been since you talked to him? And they were like, well, a day or two. And I was like, well, I mean, it's not like uncommon for my dad to be kind of here and there, like at a friend's house, and him lose his phone, or he'd have to get minutes on his phone or something. And he was just like, it just seemed like he was like kind of chaotic and just, I guess, unorganized is the word. It would just always drive me crazy of how unorganized he was. And about, I would say I tried calling him a few times and he didn't answer. We started looking at like the county jails. We started looking at hospitals and he wasn't there. Because you just never know, like he could have gotten in a car wreck or something, and we did not find anything.
According to Bailey, Jaylan Alston did live a chaotic lifestyle and he stayed on the road a lot, but he wouldn't have not gotten back to her if she had called him. He would have always returned the phone call and he would have done it quickly. Jaylan Alston was last seen September 1st, 2017. His vehicle was found on the family farm with some items laying on the top of the car, including his hat and some of his belongings. His vehicle was found unlocked.
The weird thing was like his car was still at the farm, which was kind of a red flag to me because we have a farm in Ozark. It's our family farm, and we've had it for generations. And my grandpa and my grandma live on it. My uncle lives on it. And then my dad lived on it during the time that he went missing. I was like, that's so weird that his car is there and it was unlocked, apparently. And apparently his hat was on top of it. My dad pretty much lived out of his car. So that was very, like, anytime that I've known my dad, he locks, it doesn't matter if he's going in the house for a second, he's locking his car because he thinks somebody's going to take all his junk, which that's what it was. It was just a bunch of junk. But, you know, he loved the thrift shop and he just collected so many items and wanted to bring them home, you know? So that was weird to me that his car would be unlocked like that. Like, my uncle said it kind of just looks like he got out to check something and then he never returned back to the car. I just had like a pit in my stomach, like something wasn't right. My cousin and my dad are very close, And she said she went out there to like search around to see if she could find anything. She said it just felt very eerie, like something wasn't right, something bad happened. She just couldn't put her finger on it. Before I get into like all of that real quick, I wanted to kind of go back to like the last conversation I had with my dad, because I went back to Arkansas. I think it was like April or May. I want to say it was somewhere around my dad's birthday. I saw him and we talked, and he kind of told me, like, he was like, I just don't really feel like a person right now, and I've just been kind of, depressed. And he's like, just seeing you made my, and visiting with you just made my day, and just made me, have hope again. And I was just like, oh, that makes me sad that you've been feeling that way, because I had no idea that you've been feeling that way, because anytime I'm on the phone with him, he's just cracking jokes, and he's always making people laugh. And I think that's just like his number one job was just trying to make me laugh constantly, and just saying like the dumbest things, or he was just really embarrassing at times. But, to a dad, he was just having fun. Like, we would go through drive-thrus and he would just pull pranks on like the drive-thru person. And I'm a teenager, so I'm like, oh my gosh, Dad, you're so freaking embarrassing. Stop doing this. Or he would leave like little notes. He kept calling me and saying, hey, have you got a ding dong lately? And I was like, a ding dong? What are you talking about? And I was like, let me go look in this ding dong package, because he's been trying to hint to me about ding dong. So I open it, and then there's a note in there that says, step away and put the ding dong back or something. I was like, what the heck? You're so silly. Like, he just did the funniest stuff. So it was just very unlikely for my dad just to not let anybody know where he was at, first of all. And especially like for him not to like, he normally would call me back pretty quickly on phone calls. And so for him not to get back to me after like a day, or like really the first 24 hours, I was like, okay, I'm getting a little scared that something happened. This is not like him not to at least call somebody back. Like, somebody's got to know where he's at. So it was just me and my brother, Josh, and he's very family oriented. Like, he would never like up and disappear and not let us know where he went. I mean, if he was in trouble, I think he would say like, hey, in a little bit of trouble, I'm going to be gone for a few days or something, just to like let us know. Or if he was in trouble and he needed to come to Florida, he had that option too. I just knew that just wasn't right, because we were very close.
At this point, a missing persons report was made for Jaylan Alston. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office did come out to the Alston property. According to Bailey, several officers looked around the place, kind of scouted around. They took down some information, and that was the beginning of the investigation.
I think I was in Florida for 2 or 3 weeks by the time I was able to come to Arkansas, because I just kept hoping that like my dad would eventually just kind of come out of the woodwork and like show up. And then by like the second week, I was like, okay, no, I have to move back. This is like not a drill. This is real. Like I can't stay here anymore and, wonder what's going on up there. Like, I have to get hands on, like, what are they doing up there? What information do they have? Are they doing their jobs correctly? When I had gotten there, he had been missing for about probably 3 to 4 weeks at this point. His car was gone. That was originally on the farm. I don't really know. All his stuff was in one of our barns. I didn't really know, like, what happened to his car. I was like, okay, is his car an impound? No, somebody sold it. I heard that it was his ex-wife, but nobody really, like, told me, which I think might have been her car to begin with. So I was like, okay, but why would she sell that? That's a little questionable. Or somebody got rid of it. But they never put it in impound, which was a red flag to me, because anytime somebody goes missing, you put their car in impound and you check it for prints and clues and hair follicles. Like, I watch a lot of crime TV shows, so I kind of know the drill. Like, I'm addicted to it. And then my life became a real life crime show. But that was one of the first red flags to me.
So this recording was made whenever I first started talking to Bailey about her father's case. Through the course of our discussion, we were able to uncover new information that Bailey didn't have before, and I want to update that here. In the time that Jaylan Alston has been missing, there have been several investigators that have been on his case at different points of time. I reached out to 3 investigators, and 2 of them responded to me and were able to answer some questions for me. So one of the investigators told me that he believed that Jaylan's brother, Darren, is the one that sold his vehicle. But Bailey reached out to other relatives and was able to find out that the vehicle, who was the ex-wife's vehicle, is actually still in the possession of the ex-wife and has never been searched.
Then second of all, I was like, okay, well, did this person get interviewed? Did this person get interviewed? Have they been talking? Have they searched the farm? They did not search the farm. They kept talking about searching the farm. They never did that. The third one was they were lying about interviews, because they would say, I would call and be like, hey, did y'all interview so-and-so? I would, because I was trying to help. I was like, okay, well, this is one of my dad's good friends. You should interview him. He said that he saw my dad 2 days prior to him going missing. And I was actually interviewing my own people and writing notes down too, so I wouldn't forget. They were like, yeah, we talked to this person, and I would go to this person and be like, hey, they said they talked to you. And they're like, no, they never talked to me. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. I was like, well, maybe they said they were going to talk to them. And I was like, well, they said they're going to talk to you, so just be on the lookout. And then weeks would go by and I'd be like, hey, did they ever interview you? No, they haven't. And I'm like, well, what the heck is the holdup? What are they doing? I was like, I guess they do have a lot of cases, but this is just the number one thing. It's not that hard to interview somebody. So I got a hold of my uncle, who's on my mom's side, because he works for the state police. I talked to him and I was like, can you please help me? Anything that you can find on my dad, can you let me know? This is his name, this is his birthday, this is how tall he was. Give him all the information, He was like, well, I found this article. And I was like, where did you find that? He's like, I literally just did a Google search. And I was like, what the heck? Which I think I had seen that article before, but I didn't think it had anything to do with my dad, because sometimes when you Google your name, there's other people with the same name. So I was like, that doesn't have anything to do with him. And I guess it did. And when I was reading it, I was like, what the heck? This happened in May, I think. Literally, it happened maybe a couple weeks after I had just saw him in Arkansas when I was visiting. And then this is 2-3 months prior to him going missing. So to me, that was a red flag. But in this article, it had something about this cop was getting sexual favors from another girl and helping her boyfriend out on bond. The cop was Jeff Wood, and the girl was Carrie Bach. And this is all public information. I mean, it's on Google, so the article is still there. And my dad had a video of it, a phone with the video of the evidence, and I guess was kind of blackmailing Jeff Wood. That's what it seemed like to me in the article. Well, then I was like, Jeff Wood, that sounds very familiar. And I was looking into it, I was like, that is the detective that was on my dad's case. And to me, I was like, how are they, this is a big conflict of interest. How are they letting this happen? And so I told my uncle that. I was like, this is the guy that is the head of my dad's case. And I was like, is there any way that you can help? And he was like, well, normally the state police don't get involved unless the, county asks them to get involved. So he couldn't really do anything. And he kind of gave me the number for, I guess, somebody higher up than him on the ranking. I called this person and I told them what I knew, And I think this was for the area, like the state police area, because my uncle works the one in Little Rock. He gave me a number for one that was in the area, like Fort Smith or something, because they do more of like the Northwest Arkansas area. So I called him and I was like, hey, this is just a big conflict of interest. And I didn't know if this like was okay or if we could put somebody else on my dad's case because I don't like this. And he's like, okay, let me give you a call back. And he calls me back and he's like, well, I spoke to Jeff Wood and they said that he's doing a favor for the family and that your dad and him were very close. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And if they were close, I've never met Jeff Wood in my life. I think I would have met him by now at least once. And that article seems like they weren't very close because, you know, he had to resign for a little bit or something or went on leave after that article was published and word got out. Maybe not after the article was published, but after everything had went down with the situation. I was like, that doesn't make sense that they would be friends because if I was in his shoes, I'd probably be pretty mad. So I was just like, okay, well then. And I think after that phone call, the case got brought down to somebody else, another investigator. But I'm pretty sure Jeff Wood was still working there at Franklin County. And also that was another question. I'm like, how is he still on the job too after this article came out and the public knows? So that was kind of another red flag to me. I was like, I don't know how y'all are going to let somebody on the force that you know that was doing corrupt things. And then also with that big conflict of interest on, you know, the article and my dad being involved, and then now he's missing and he's the person on my dad's case. That doesn't make any sense to me. So they gave it to another investigator, which I didn't really feel comfortable talking to anybody in Franklin County because I'm like, they're all still there. They all know each other. It's a small town, and they still weren't doing anything even after the investigation got brought over to somebody else.
One of the investigators that was assigned to the case after Jeff Wood made the comment that either nothing was done or nothing was documented on the case up until the point that he got the case. He also commented that he found it odd that the vehicle that Jaylan Alston was last known to be in, which he referred to as the crime scene, was released back to the family. I did find out that at one point there was a rumor that there was evidence in a pond, and they said that they looked at the pond, but no evidence was ever found.
And then I think there was like 2 investigators that it had been switched to over the course of like a year. And I was like, this case is just being, and I would still talk to them and kind of just tell them like what I knew around the time that my dad went missing and who he was hanging out with and where I the last think he would be, you know, I'd help them, but they never like took that information anywhere. It seemed like, and still like I would say, you need to talk to this person and you need to talk to this person. And they would never do any interviews for me. So, or interviews just at all. So that was just very strange to me. And it was making me upset that they weren't taking this case seriously because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, you know, my dad, he was an addict and he did struggle, but that doesn't make him any less of a person. And there's people out here that care about him. And it's just like, I felt like, well, they just don't care because he has been to jail a few times. They probably know who he is. And they're probably thinking, well, you know, this is not really that serious of a case. He's probably, you know, at a friend's house or something. But that's not the case at all. Because, you know, here it is 5 years later and he's still not here. I know for sure my Uncle Darren, which he's the one who made the missing persons report. So obviously that he gave him his statement. I know they were supposed to talk to like our cousin. I wanted them to talk to the whole family, you know, just, you know, get a timeline of like, when was the last time you saw him? And like even some of his friends. And every time I would even call my grandma and be like, hey, does, you know, the investigator call you? And she's like, nope, I haven't heard from them. And I'm like, well, what are they doing? Why are they not calling, like, especially like my grandma, like, get a time. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Like, get a timeline of like, okay, this person saw him 3 days ago. This person saw him 2 days before he went missing, get a timeline of like what he was doing and who he was hanging out with. And they never really did that. And maybe they were just taking my word off things. But I'm like, you need to actually talk to these people, even if you don't think they're a suspect. But I don't think we have, like, there's no body, there's no crime. So maybe they were just waiting on a body to show up. But at the same time, like, they never did any searching either. Because we got told that they were going to come in with dogs and search the farm and do like drones and stuff over the farm, and they never did that. And I felt like they were just getting our hopes up with that, or they were like, we've got to put in this special clearance or something. Like, we got to get it approved first. And I don't know like what was going on with that, but they never did. And so,
speaking to the two investigators that replied to me, one said that they searched a pond, and the other one said that at one point they heard something about a well and that they looked at that well. I was told that there was not enough evidence to get a search warrant, and that was the reasoning for the minimal searches.
We just kind of searched the farm ourselves and we never found anything. But with, Jeff Wood being the first person on the scene and him being a big conflict of interest with it, I'm like, you never know. He could have taken evidence or, destroyed stuff, saying he was helping us, and in reality he wasn't. And a lot of people like that I thought would know about the article, they didn't know anything about it. Like, I was like, well, y'all are up here, like, my dad's brother and sisters. I was like, y'all haven't seen this article? And they're like, no, we didn't know anything about it. I was like, well, that's really weird since y'all are in this area. And I feel like it's such a small town that word does get out fairly quickly. After so many attempts of getting like help, I think that when people just started noticing, I would post on like pages of things that were going on. Like, I always posted my dad on Facebook because social media was the first thing that I kind of went to get help. And I got I probably got like 5,000 shares on his missing persons photos. And eventually they started putting up flyers and stuff around town. I don't know if they still have them up, but like at gas stations and liquor stores or, whatever. And people would say that they'd seen my dad's missing persons picture around town. So that made me feel a little better that they were doing that. So as far as I know now, the FBI have been like in the area investigating some of the corruption there. Because I know like Jeff Wood doesn't work at Johnson County anymore. And then shortly after he resigned, then I saw that Jimmy Stevens got arrested. So I think they're kind of starting to narrow down some of the corruption there, which is good. And hopefully, it'll give us some more answers.
It is difficult to follow the work timeline of Jeff Wood, so I think that now is a good time to discuss that. Jeff Wood started at Johnson County Sheriff's Office when he got in trouble for allegedly doing inappropriate acts involving Carrie Box. He resigned from that position and was hired by Franklin County at some point in the 6-month period between the time that he was in trouble at Johnson County and the time that Jaylan Alston disappeared in Franklin County. He was in Franklin County for a fairly short amount of time before he was rehired at Johnson County. And I don't know the reason for him leaving Franklin County, but for the fact that he was from Johnson County and wanted to be employed in Johnson County. Now, if you're not familiar with Johnson County, there has been a lot of news coverage on Johnson County, Arkansas lately, because in December, the sheriff of Johnson County, Jimmy Stevens, was arrested in Crawford County, and that tipped off that there had been an FBI investigation into corruption and things involving Jimmy Stevens, but not just Jimmy Stevens, it also involves Jeff Wood. And Jeff Wood did resign from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, I believe, due to these allegations and the investigation by the FBI that is still ongoing at this time. Next, Bailey is going to talk about the status of the case now and where the case stands in general.
So far, we haven't really found a whole lot of evidence on my dad's case. It's been 5 years. They just may not be telling me all the evidence they have because it's just such a small town and word does get out pretty easily. So they try to keep it pretty tight on what they do find out. But we don't have a body. So it's very hard when you don't have a body and you don't have a crime and you don't really know where this person is to create a case on it. And then it's been 5 years. So, people's memories kind of start to deteriorate or you forget things after so long. And that's why I wrote things down in the beginning. And I actually reread my notebook not too long ago. And I was like, I completely forgot that I even talked to this person and that they told me this. It was kind of crazy how much I personally had forgotten that they told me in the beginning or what had little details that they had told me. But also it was really hard because it was a bunch of he said, she said kind of things. So it's kind of hard to go off certain stories because you're like, okay, is this true? Or did you hear this from somebody else? And it was a lot of I heard this person tell me that he was over here doing this and that. Yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, okay. And then it's trying to talk to that person was hard to get a hold of, or it would just come to a dead end, or the stories wouldn't add up. And also, how rumors go in small towns, they kind of get out of hand at times. So I'm like, is this really what happened? Or did this just a story just kind of spiral out of control? So
in October of 2018, a year after her father's disappearance, another tragedy struck Bailey's family. And unfortunately, it is a tragedy that is connected to the disappearance of her father.
My brother, actually, he's 10 years older than me. So I was 19 when this happened. So he would have been 29. When my dad went missing, he got super paranoid. And he was telling me, don't talk to anybody. Don't talk to the cops. Don't do this. Don't do that. And I'm just thinking well, he's just, this is a very scary time. Our dad just went missing. We don't know where he's at. So of course you're going to think of the worst thing. But I feel I've always been the cup's half full person. So I'm always very hopeful about things and situations. And I'm we're probably going to find our dad somewhere. He probably got amnesia or something. And he's, in Little Rock or something like that. Because he did work in Little Rock at times, in Ozark. Sometimes he would be in Dallas because my cousins, they own a business out of Little Rock and Dallas doing striping work for the road. So my dad was always there helping them too. So that wasn't uncommon. And he actually, that July, he was in Dallas. So I kind of made my own timeline. But it was just, I just thought Josh was being kind of crazy. And I was like, he is kind of had schizophrenic tendencies. So I was I just think he's super paranoid right now. And it wasn't until a year later he called me. And we've never really been that close. He was always closer. He has another sister on his mom's side, and we're actually a year apart. But he's always been they've lived together. I lived with my mom. He lived with his mom. So he was very close with his other sister. Not that we weren't close, but we just weren't as close as them. So when he called me, it was kind of a shock me because I always thought that he would have called his other sister. But he was I love you. And it just sounded to me he was sounding very suicidal because he was saying things I love you, everything's going to be okay. Just know that I'm doing this for you or something. And I was just trying to talk him off his ledge. I just felt maybe he was having an episode or something. And I'm wasn't there. I lived so far away. I was hours away. So I'm I can't just drive up there. And so I called his other sister and I was hey, Josh is kind of sounding he's a little suicidal or something. I think you really need to check on him. And she's okay, well, she called me back and she's okay, well, I talked to my mom and he's fine now. I think he was just having a breakdown at that moment. Which is understandable. When your dad goes missing and you don't really know what's going on. I've been there, had those breakdowns too. But nothing like severe like that. And the next morning I get a call that he's dead. It was just very heartbreaking to hear that. They said he had an overdose, which wasn't very like surprising to me. But at the same time, like the way that he was talking, he was saying like he was doing this to protect me and stuff like that. And he was always saying like, don't trust people, don't talk to people, don't talk to the cops. Pretty much after when I found out everything going on with like Jeff Woods, it started to make sense. So there's still some question about that because I know like, and I think this kind of falls into like one of those categories. Like maybe he knew something that he didn't really want to get out, or somebody made him do this, or he was gonna, go missing too or something. So that's kind of like in question as well. So that happened like a year after my dad had been missing. It was like a little over a year. So the two situations have always been super crazy. I'm just like, honestly, I can't even believe like all this stuff has like happened. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, how do you get through that? Like you were only like 19 at the time. And they're like, how do you even like function from day to day? And I was like, well, I don't. Well, in the beginning, I really did it. I would say like I lost a lot of jobs. Like, they weren't like really important jobs. But like I would waitress, and it was just like my mind was just elsewhere, and I was just more worried about other things than like, doing the day-to-day job. And it was very hard for me to keep a job around that time for probably about like the first like 2 to 3 years. And I really tried like my hardest to find out as much information as I could. And I just could feel like it was deteriorating my health. And I was just going down like a bad place. And I was like, I've got to take a break. So that's why I kind of travel a lot as much as I do, because it just helps with my mental state too, just to see somewhere new, and kind of gives me like a breath of fresh air to be somewhere else. Yeah, it's just been really hard. But now, it's been so long, and there is an investigator on the case that cares about finding my dad and finding answers as much as I do. So that kind of makes me feel better that there's somebody on the case that is very wanting to know the same answers as me and cares as much as I do, because I don't have to try so hard to find these answers, because it took a lot on me, especially when you live so far away and you're trying to call people and trying to interview people. It's very hard. And I felt like it kind of took away a lot of like, when you're 19, that you're just now an adult, kind of took away all those years that I thought were going to be like the best years of my life. But they were still good. I still have good memories, and I did a lot of fun things. But also there's like a darkness there because of something super traumatizing that happened before all this. Like my dad, I had no idea that any of this was going on or what was going on behind the scenes. And I felt like I found like out a lot of things, and I'm just thinking like, what was going on that made him go missing? Like just, he was a grown man. He made his decisions, but at the same time, like, what was just involved in all that, it's just crazy. And we still don't really have any answers, which I hope that we do get answers soon, because it's going on like 6 years at this point. It's been a very long time. It's been a very long road, which they had kind of told me in the beginning that this would probably be a long drawn out case. So I'm glad that they told me that and kind of set the reality for me that cases like this take a very long time especially when you don't have a body, it takes a very long time to find answers.
Bailey talked about one case in particular that has given her hope that eventually they will have answers about her father's disappearance. If you listen to the details of that case, you may recognize it. Or if you listen to podcast, it was featured on season 4 of the Helen Gone podcast. It is the case of Evie Stebeck.
And I remember doing like research on that too. And this is, I forget her name, but there was a girl that went missing in Little Rock, and her parents had been trying so hard to find her. And she finally got found like around the 5th year. And her body was like not too far from where her car was last left, or where her car was left. But the police, or her parents could never get the police to look into it either. So, and they finally, I guess, somehow got them to look into it, and her body was found like in the drainage ditch. So, and I know like a lot of the times where their vehicle has last been seen, their bodies normally aren't too far away from that. But I don't think that he is still here, because if he was, especially when Josh passed away, there is no way in hell that my dad would have missed that funeral. Like, if his kids were in danger, he would have, jumped in front of a train for us. And I don't think, like, if he was in trouble and, like, was hiding out or something from people or whatever situation that he was in, there's no way that he would have missed. Like, he still probably would have shown up for Josh's funeral. And in fact, I know there was people that even stayed after the funeral just to see if my dad would show up, and they stayed out there all night, and they said that he did. Just to me, I just knew from the beginning something bad happened. I don't know what it is, but he's probably not here anymore. And sometimes I wonder, like, do I really want to find out what happened to him? There's kind of like peace and not knowing, but also it's very hard. Like, if he's not here, like, it would be nice to have like a grave spot to go to and like pay your respects to, just to kind of have that closure. Which people say closure, and I'm like, do I want to know or do I not want to know? Like, is it going to be so painful to know exactly what happened to him that's going to really give me closure? Is it going to give me closure just maybe not to ever really know what happened to him? Justice might be like finding out what happened to him and putting whoever did it away. I just try to, I guess, to remember all the good things and the good times with my dad and Josh too, because it was very hard to lose them like within a year of each other. I felt like I hadn't even like processed my dad being missing, and then my brother, overdoses too. So that was very hard. I mean, every time that I like look on the Franklin County page or like see something on the news in the area that they found a body, like my heart just drops, and I'm like, is that my dad? Did they find my dad? And I remember a couple of years ago, there was a body that they found, and I just kept calling, like, is this my dad? Have y'all found out? But it wasn't him. I'm always just very on top of that, wondering if they're going to find him or not somewhere in the woods or something crazy. There was a body that was actually found in like Georgia, and somebody had tagged me in this because they did a sketch of this person, because the body was found in the water and they had tied, I guess, an anchor to this guy's leg and drowned him. This sketch looked just like my dad. It was so freaky. And I was like, that's him. And so I called them out there, and then also the investigator that was working on my dad's case also called them too, because it did look a lot like him. And I was like, that's my dad. Like, it just is. It was so weird. I mean, because I was, he has a tattoo on his back, and this guy didn't have a tattoo on his back, and it literally says Alston. So I was like, that's our last name. So, but it wasn't him, which was honestly very surprising, because when you look at this sketch, you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, yeah, that is a lot of resemblance there.
Bailey spoke about one specific investigator that had at some point been assigned her father's case. And this is what she had to say.
Yeah, Curtis Bishop, I actually really liked him. And he actually did what he said he was going to do. They searched houses, like they follow leads. Like once they had a lead, he followed it through. But he retired recently, so he's not on the case anymore. So it took 4 people. Like the case went through 4 different people. It's pretty crazy, because it's like how much information got lost in all of that. But I tried to tell, once it got to Curtis, like I told him I pretty much did with all of them. Like, it's like I had to repeat myself on like what happened and stuff. But Curtis was actually the one that actually went through, took DNA samples from people, like family members, just in case they found a body or something, or just test it against other things that they found. But all of it was pretty much like a dead end. But yeah, he was one of the good investigators that I really liked. when this happens, when you're so young like that, it changes your life forever. I just didn't want my dad's case to be swept under the rug. I did talk to Carrie. It was really hard to talk to her because I think she was a little shooken up from everything. And she's very open with me, and she talked to me about what she knew. She said that she, knew my dad. My dad was actually supposed to help her because she wanted it to stop. I think whatever interaction was going on with Jeff Wood and her, she wanted it to stop. And my dad said he could help her. And so I guess that's what he thought he could do, was to blackmail Jeff Wood. I'm not sure how close him and Carrie were, though. I think they were just friends. But, talking to Carrie, this was an ongoing thing, apparently. I think she did it to help her boyfriend out in the beginning, and then it just kept going. She said after this article was released, she did not leave her house at all. She was very scared to leave her house. She was embarrassed,
So much of the Jaylan Alston disappearance is almost shrouded in the fact that there's a connection to Jeff Wood. The Jaylan Alston-Jeff Wood connection all happens in 2017, so I'm going to try as fast as I can to sum up the Jeff Wood case. But there are some details that I feel like are important, so buckle up. Really, the case with Jeff Wood starts back in 2016. 2002, Jeff Wood started working for the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. By 2016, he was a CID investigator. And at some point in 2016, Jeff Wood and another officer were called to a home where Carrie Box and her boyfriend, Bobby Warnock, lived on a domestic violence incident. Bobby Warnock was arrested, and because he was a parolee, he was issued a parole violation and held in jail. According to the other officer, Jacob Shook, several days later, there was a report that was received about stolen goods being at the Box home. And so they went back out to the home of Carrie Box and Bobby Warnock, where the stolen goods were found. Bobby Warnock and Carrie Box were both arrested and charged with that crime. Apparently, a short time later, Carrie Box calls Jeff Wood to come to her home, according to Jeff Wood, and maybe oral sex is performed, maybe it's not, depending on who you ask, or actually when you ask. It seems like Carrie Box probably said that this is what happened until she was questioned about it from the Arkansas State Police. Jeff Wood says that Carrie Box approached him, that she straddled him, that she tried to undo his pants, and that he pushed her off and held up his arms and pointed at the ring on his finger and said that he wasn't going to do that because he's a married man. On August 8th, 2016, Michelle McLeod files a form saying that she doesn't wish to pursue charges against Carrie Box and Bobby Warnock anymore because Jeff Wood helped to retrieve the items and Carrie Box gave her $1,000 cash and a guitar back. So she's requesting the charges are dropped, which does happen. Those charges are dropped. So Jeff Wood, in his statement, says that Carrie Box continually is contacting him, asking him for favors, and he says that he cannot do that. He is a good cop, and he doesn't possess those skills. But it is noted that in August of 2016, Jeff Wood does help get charges dropped for Carrie Box and Bobby Warnock. After a search warrant is received, officers do find one incident in particular where Carrie Box asked Jeff Wood to help her friend out and make a ticket go away. And within minutes, Jeff Wood gets off the phone and makes the ticket go away. In December of 2016, Jeff Wood writes a recommendation letter for Bobby Warnock in order to help get him released from prison. So, Jeff Wood is doing favors for Carrie Box. The question is, why was he doing the favors? So according to Jaylan Alston's interview that was done in March of 2017, he said a woman named Christine Williamson, who is known to him and also to Carrie Box, told him that Carrie Box had a video recording where Carrie Box had Jeff Wood come over to her home, and it appeared that Carrie Box performed oral sex on Jeff Wood. He then said, whenever he asked Carrie Box about it, she said that it appears that she is giving Jeff Wood, quote unquote, head, but she's not. She says that she tried to do it, but he pushed her away. In his interview, Jaylan Alston said that he told Carrie Box that that's not right to try to do that to Jeff Wood, and convinces her to give him the cell phone that the recordings are made on. So the theme of the entire investigation seems to be that Carrie Box tried to set up Jeff Wood, and when that didn't succeed, she sent out these pictures that made it look like she was doing things with Jeff Wood. Christine Williamson says Carrie Box is, quote, sick in the head. Everyone suddenly says that nothing happened, even though there's a video and photos floating around that really makes it look like something did happen. And there's also all this other evidence that Jeff Wood did do favors for Carrie Box. And you have Jeff Wood saying that his partner threw the phone in the Arkansas River. You have the partner saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't throw anything in the river. But Jeff Wood does replace the phone for Carrie Box. He goes and gets her another phone. At the end of the investigation, the prosecutor did decide that he didn't feel like there was enough evidence to criminally charge Jeff Wood. But the day after the prosecutor made this decision, Jeff Wood resigned from his position at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. Also, Christine Williamson says that Carrie Box has cameras all over her house. I don't believe that anyone else said that Carrie Box had cameras in her house, except for John Williamson, who I would assume is a relative of Christine, who says that he has done work for Carrie Box before and that she has cameras all over the inside and outside of her home. And I believe, it's to be expected that your family member would corroborate your story, but the fact that no one else says that they see cameras is just really strange to me. Anyway, Jeff Wood resigns from his position at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office the day after they decide not to file charges, and he gets a job at the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. I don't know when he got the job at the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, but we do know that he was the lead investigator on Jaylan Alston's disappearance case 6 months later. So sometime in that 6-month period, he was hired at Franklin County as a criminal investigation officer. The thing with Jeff Wood is that he didn't stay at Franklin County. He was at Franklin County for the first part of the investigation of the Jaylan Alston disappearance. And then again, at some point, he goes back to Johnson County where he is rehired in what appears to be his same old position. So like I said earlier, this is the part where Jeff Wood is working under Jimmy Stevens. Now they're both under investigation by the FBI for corruption. Boatloads of corruption are happening or have happened in Johnson County and are being investigated by the FBI right now. I cannot say that Jeff Wood has anything to do with the disappearance of Jaylan Alston. I don't know that. I can say that Jeff Wood has a history of being a very corrupt police officer and doing corrupt things while on duty as an officer of the law. If you have any information about the disappearance of Jaylan Alston, please email the tip email that Bailey has set up at JaylanAlstonCaseTips@gmail.com. Even if you think it's something that may be insignificant, it could make all the difference in the world. So please email those tips, and you can also stay anonymous.